Everhood 2 contains persistent violent flashing lights and distorted reality. If you have photosensitive epilepsy, it is strongly urged that you exercise extreme caution before attempting to pick up this game. Everhood 2 will blow your mind with hallucinogenic images and thought-provoking topics on life, death, the soul, existence, consciousness, time, and reality. As someone who has faced the numerous trials of Everhood no-hit achievements, it felt like the game took a more leisurely approach, feeling more toned down because the key aspect now is a one-shot mechanic rather than no-hit achievements, and it's quite tolerant of your mistakes, allowing you to simply recover and heal to reattempt a fight. Everhood 2 focuses heavily on the psychedelic realm of the mind-altering topics that felt oddly like a story written down and encoded while in an altered state of mind. The result is a sensory overload, blending incomprehensibly bizarre topics while still managing to keep you engaged as it toys with your brain in all the right and wrong ways. This is not a game for casual players seeking a peaceful session in terms of the visual display, but it still may be appreciated owing to the more mellowed out gameplay. While this may appeal to some, it is perhaps one of the game's weaker points. Besides the jokes, memes, and internet references, I really wasn't sure what to think. I played Everhood for 50 hours and really enjoyed going through the game numerous times to piece together my own story as stated in our latest review of it. What made that game so fun is that it changed things up with each playthrough. You could play pacifist or genocide or a mixture of both in certain cases. In comparison, I was exhausted by Everhood 2 because it was the same gameplay every time, with very little change other than unlocking a new path, which may or may not have been the key to progressing some underlying hidden story that needed to be triggered in a very specific way. And to find these secrets, you would have to, once again, go through the many hours of tribulations to attempt it all over again. There was never a point where I felt grounded in the story. Although this is technically a sequel, it does not feel like one. From start to finish, the story is all over the place, introducing new characters, bringing back old ones and locations within Everhood for a brief moment, and then bombarding the player with countless fake endings and ultimately looping them back to the very beginning in a very eerie way. One thing that I want to point out is that you are initially put on a bus. This bus appears once in the beginning of Everhood and is never shown again. Everhood 2 explores the duality of life. This might very well be what pieces together Everhood and Everhood 2 as two sides of the same coin opposing one another. Otherwise, it might have just been a coincidence. I dove in expecting a story over time to accompany the gameplay, but instead I got lectured on why we are here, explained to the perspectives of interdimensional beings in an art museum. Basically somebody who has achieved a higher plane of existence. There was a lot of talking with NPCs that seemed absolutely out of place and designed to specifically mess with the player. It's a narrative that requires numerous individuals to collaborate and speculate on because it felt next to impossible to perceive alone. If the player focused solely on the rhythm gameplay and ignored the story, I'm certain there would have been less of a problem with looping back around and playing through the long distorted corridors and timed events. These were features that I especially disliked. I expected a continuation of the previous story, which may have been the problem, as the more I uncovered, the more it felt like it was a prequel to the events that transpired in the first. Everhood 2 does a good job of showcasing a world that progressively melts away right before your eyes. No matter how much you try to ground yourself, it's not very helpful while the game is incorporating a non-linear story that intentionally messes with your head. You begin in a state of confusion, gradually unearthing a breadcrumb trail of secrets that eventually leads you to an even more distorted understanding. Though it lacks severe clarity, this was a very interesting and thought-provoking experience. But compared to Everhood, Everhood 2 loses much of that simplicity that made the first game so emotionally impactful, even if there wasn't a whole lot of character bonding. On that note, why are Sam and Irvine here? I could understand Sam because he played certain parts in the previous game with story progression, but Irvine didn't really do anything outside of hiding in specific places that the player had to go out of their way to find. And here they have access to interdimensional time travel, but it was never really established how. The whole game felt designed to overwhelm the player with as many sensory overloads as possible to make it very difficult to think with a clear mind, which added to the experience of the game, forcing and compelling you to want to play it all over again in search for more secrets as it taunted you that there's nothing else to experience. But looking at the achievements, there's definitely a lot of secrets hidden within. So out of spite and curiosity, you do it anyways. The soundtrack was great and the character designs were fantastic, showcasing just how well foreign gnomes can showcase their styles. Though many of the songs are often excessively layered with static and distorted effects, making it very difficult to fully enjoy them or to have a lasting impact. Most fights follow the same pattern, with the same monsters inhabiting the regions that you explore. Since this game requires multiple playthroughs to uncover hidden features, it does become very exhausting, though for some progression, you could just wait and fail certain events to bypass the whole 15-minute survival missions. The game introduces a new system where you are asked a multitude of questions that shape your soul color. Surprisingly, my favorite color is blue, and I enjoy assassin playstyles, so seeing my color turn blue felt like things were going my way for once, giving me some sense of control. Your soul color holds significant meaning that you will gradually piece together with time, exploring this distorted world and its equally distorted characters, hopping between realities of space and time to end this whole nightmare. Everhood 2 is a bit different from Everhood's combat system. The colored crescent notes rain down towards the player. The goal here is to match your weapon's soul with those notes. To get the most out of your damage, you can switch between your acquired weapons, each offering special effects based on how high of a level that they are. I didn't see much of a need to do this unless I'm missing some underlying elements for their use, since I just chose to max out the damage of my daggers and focus on blue, green, purple, and rainbow notes. Absorbing the right color for each weapon boosts its damage tremendously. For example, the green spear works best with the green notes, the blue daggers with the blue notes, and the axe with the red notes. You don't have to match the colors with the weapons, but they will increase your damage output to help you take on the fights much more easily. Absorbing a color while you're currently stacked up with a different color will reset you back to 1. The goal is to win each fight, or lose and follow a slightly different narrative, but if you're after achievements, it's fairly easy to do. All you have to do is to avoid taking damage to stack up your notes and pull off a high stacked color for the potential of one-shot. You could realistically take a lot of damage before pulling it off thanks to the self-sustained weapon upgrades and the fact that you will not lose immediately when you take damage, especially on the higher difficulties. As we mentioned before, it's much more lenient. Beyond the physically and visually demanding gameplay at times, it's difficult to pinpoint exactly what Everhood 2 is all about. You'll find yourself walking and running through hallways, dance clubs, and secret elevator rooms, each filled with content creators, memes, references, and more. All of these elements added more to the confusion, making it very hard to identify a direction or real purpose outside of blending reality into a video game. 1 hour turned into 10 hours, and 10 turned into 20. I constantly found myself wondering if I was missing something else entirely, which did fuel more desires to explore but at a much lower interest, since I was just so sick and tired of seeing the same fake or real endings no matter how many times I succeeded or failed. I loved playing through Everhood because I was able to create an understanding, relate to them, and feel for them. However, with Everhood 2, I was left scratching my head dumbfounded. While I've consistently praised Everhood for its creativity, Everhood 2 felt directionless, with countless topics appearing out of nowhere seemingly for no reason other than to serve a meme reference and to push hard for that mind-bending experience. At its worst, it invokes a lingering sense of unease and fear that we may never truly understand the meaning of life and why it is so intrinsically intertwined in the world of video games. I was hoping for more of a challenge, story, and lore, but all I got was a desire for more. Even if I were to shift my perspective, it still would have made no sense. But then again, that's probably because I haven't experienced the kind of drug-induced hallucinations or deeply meditative thoughts about life that might click with somebody with more of an understanding for it. I can't quite put into words how this game left me feeling. I went in with excitement, eager to uncover all of the secrets, yet every single detail that I stumbled upon sparked a tornado of thoughts that pulled me out completely. Each time I reached an ending, whether it was real or not, left me captivated, drawn back in for more. I needed to understand, to ground myself, and to find closure. I couldn't just leave this game until I discovered the truth of it all, even if that truth was that there were no absolute truths. It's a game that I'm going to have to return to over time as it was very mentally draining. I wouldn't put it on the same level as the first game, but it was still just as good.